I decided I should probably do videos again, and I know I didn't film the sketch for this one. I hadn't decided to make a video at that point yet. So, this is Infinity Train fan art. I'm doing the line art, and as usual when I do this I'm going to talk a lot about my special interests and everything, so you've been warned. I don't do the line art in a specific order. It's more like stuff I want to do at the moment, and I jump from a place on the drawing to another one. Infinity Train. The show you can't watch legally anywhere, basically. So my friends from the film club decided we should all watch a series. And it had been on my to-watch later list for I think ever since the first book or season came out. I think it was because I heard about it on Cell Spec's channel, who talks a lot about animation, and she had made a video about it, telling people to go watch it. And I was like, oh nice, and I had added it to my list and then never watched it because that list was very long. It's sort of a good thing I didn't watch it at the time, even if it's kind of sad that I missed on most of the fun with the community and stuff, because it spares me the horrible heartbreak everyone must have felt when it was cancelled and Men in Black neuralized from the internet. The first thing anyone told me when I was about to watch it was, you can't really watch it anymore. So it's not like it was a surprise or anything. So we watched season 1, and I really liked it. The same week we watched it, I downloaded it to show it to someone else, and also to have an excuse to rewatch it again so soon. And I was like, yeah, this was very good. I'm glad I watched this. And then the next week we watched book 2, and I had a weird reaction at first with the main character of book 2, Lake. It was not called Lake at the beginning, but still. She was abrasive. She has good reason to be like that, but she was very abrasive, very edgy. It kind of felt like seeing me at 14, and I was like, please, not everyone is out there to get you. Can you please chill for 2 seconds? It took me a while to get into the general mood of that season, and especially what it was trying to do. But when I got it, I ended up liking it more than book 1. And I was kind of screaming in chat during the entire ending. By the time the episode The Wasteland happened, I had realized I would probably not be normal about this series, and that was going to be a big special interest from now on. And oh boy, was I right. Because then we watched book 3, and I'm not going to go into details about book 3 because this drawing is not about it. But it kind of broke my brain. The image I keep using is it threw a live grenade in my brain, and I haven't recovered more than a year later. And then we watched book 4, which was good. I think on the same level as book 1, which I really like as well. Not my fave one, but very good. If it was any other series, it would be my fave season of that series, I think. It's just that the quality is so high in that one. It just ends up being one of the least good seasons, even though it's really good. It's a 7 in the context of Infinity Train as a whole. It would be near perfect if it was a different show. And this character right there is Amelia. Her entire existence is a huge spoiler for book 1. I don't know why you're watching this if you haven't watched the show, but I'm still mentioning that just in case. A huge spoiler for all of book 1, yeah. She's present in most of the seasons, either as an antagonist or a secondary character. Her shadow is over the entirety of book 4, even if we only saw her once at the beginning. I'm just going to do a little recap of what she's about. So the Infinity Train, the train is supposed to appear when you're at like not necessarily your lowest, but like at a crucial point in your life, when you're about to do something really stupid or when you are very vulnerable or something. She was grieving her husband Ulrich, and we don't exactly know what she was doing when the train appeared. We only know she was running and ended up on the roof of her old university building, which kind of suggests some dark stuff, and yeah, that's my headcanon as well. So the train appeared for her and she boarded it, and apparently spent a lot of time with the conductor Won. As she says in book 3, she didn't like how Won was doing things, and one way or another she ousted it from its post, split it in two, and took its place. And she's been trying all this time to hack the train, create a car containing her entire old life, and of course Ulrich among other things in it. Which is very sad, but also kind of funny, because she's been trying to do that for 30 years when we meet her. She's like miserable. She's been living in the engine of the train for a while. There's just one bed and a ton of computer stuff. She's very unkempt. She's in her mecha a lot of the time. She's been trying really hard to hack the train all these years and to create new cars, and she has been creating new cars. But for some reason, there's one detail on her handkerchief where there's a little turtle motif on it. For some reason, every time she tries to recreate her own life, that turtle motif parasites the entire process, and her code is full of turtles. So every car she creates has turtles in it and is also broken. So it's kind of funny, but also like it's kind of sad because she's like very, very far gone. Oh. I don't know if you could hear that noise, but I had to close the window because there was a huge... It's not a wasp, I forget how they are called. I think they're Asian hornets, which was very interested in flying in my living room, and I didn't want it to go there. So yeah, she's a tragic figure, but also everything she does is low-key funny because of this motive of sorts that won't leave her alone. She's clearly one of the most fucked up people we meet in the entire story. But it's really hard to hate her or even dislike her. She's clearly in the wrong, but like she's kind of pathetic, not even tragic. Like she's so low, it feels mean to hate her too much. And also she's trying to get better. It makes her a lot more sympathetic when we see her again later. I think I'm done with the line art. I'll film the rest later. At this point I should probably start making the shadows, but instead I am going to use blue ink first, China blue ink, to define where the light is coming from. We are going to put a bit more than we should to add some sort of glow around it. These orbs, if I understood correctly, weren't in the series at the time of the pilot. They aren't in the pilot in any case. They were a concept they added by the time they were making the actual series. Instead, in the pilot, when we meet the steward, which is collecting the orbs for Amelia, the steward was like fixing something that had damaged the car from the outside. I think it was a meteor or something. I haven't watched the pilot in like a year or so. And no orbs in that version. Okay, so now we're gonna start with the shadows. There are going to be a lot of them because I want this to be quite dark. Also, it's not really a coat, it's not really a cape, I don't know how to call that. It's also kind of like a blanket, but it is black, so I have to paint it. I've already made another fan art with Amelia in the same kind of setting, full of orbs and broken devices. I just think it's a cool visual. So this is my second one like this. This is a rare case where a drawing was inspired by a word, hauntology, something that's very, very deeply inspired by the past and haunted by it, which is a word that fits what Amelia is doing perfectly. It's kind of like this post, which is like, I am haunted by a past I cannot go back to! Several exclamation points. Anyway. And isn't that like just how Amelia is in like season 3 when we last saw her? She's still very much like haunted, but like she's trying to be like anyway and move on, but it's very, very hard for her. But she's trying, she's clearly trying. She hasn't rebuilt her mecha to begin with. She's just walking around with this force field of sorts. On the one hand, it's kind of sort of like the same. She's still inside of a force field, but at the very least, people can see her now. I've also seen someone, I think it was Mick, saying something that's both very sad and very funny. Is she cosplaying Auric's robot Sona? Because the voice changer doesn't do anything. She isn't using it to control the steward or anything. She's just using it like just for kicks, apparently. She still has it when she's out of her mecha. I think she's just keeping it like for nostalgia reasons. And it's sort of the same cape thing Auric was wearing when he did that joke. And if that's what she's doing, it's again a bit funny, but mostly sad. As you've noticed, there's been some work on the shadows since last time. And right now, now that this is done, I'm going to add what I always call the basic colors. I had a friend around for a couple of days, and they made me watch a series I didn't like very much, which I'm not going to mention, otherwise people are going to like come after me if they're fans of the thing. But yeah, I didn't like it very much. It was visually confusing, not very interesting. It was funny, that's something, I guess. And in exchange, I wanted to show them Infinity Train. And I think they took offense of me not loving that series they wanted to show me, because they tried to like nitpick everything Cinema Sin style, which is exhausting, instead of engaging with the actual story. And also had the worst, possibly the worst take ever on book 2, which was that Lake should have stayed on the train. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about, man? Like, if you think it would be a better ending if Lake stayed on the train, you've not only understood nothing that book 2 was trying to say, but also I'm going to seriously question your media literacy at all. It's so weird. I don't know. There's a lot of attention to detail in this series. Back when I was rewatching on the DVD with like the commentary on, I was blown away by all the things in the background of the unfinished car. I had noticed the Humon sign in the background, but I hadn't noticed the hospital bed or like ivy drip in one shot. Even smaller details, like some flags have the coins that are in the game that Auric is playing in one of the flashbacks of the tape. I think that's when it gets to that level of detail and attention to details, I think that's where it's obvious if like the people working on the show are passionate about it or not. And people who worked on this show were very passionate, clearly. It's okay if I don't get the colors exactly right, because I'm going to drench everything in ink afterwards, so I'm overthinking this. I should just put random colors. It's not like it matters. It matters to me, but like it's not like it's important. I have collection of screenshots open on my computer screen next to this setup. I have to assume Ulrich didn't die like right away, whatever happened, because we see the hospital bed and the IV drip and everything in that unfinished car. They have to be from somewhere in Amelia's past. And like Owen Dennis, bless his heart, is always very chaotic when he answers like fan questions. And so it's never really clear when he's like being serious or not, which I usually pisses me off. But like with him, I don't know why. I think it's mostly very funny when he does it. I think it's because he's so over the top with it, and my dumb ass who can't usually distinguish between bullshit and actual answers can distinguish between them with him. One thing he hates is when people ask him what's happened to this or that character after their story ended. And every single time you do this, he's going to reply, "Oh, they died," and invent a really, really horrible death for them. Just so that people go, "No, that's stupid. I'm going to invent something better," which is basically what he wants us to do, because he very firmly believes in death of the author, and he has said so several times. I don't know if he's serious or joking when he says what happened to Ulrich was a dirt bike accident. I don't know if he's serious or not when he says that. I'm going to assume he is joking, ? If he's not joking and he actually died like that, it can't have been like immediate, considering all the hospital stuff involved, which is kind of horrible to think about. Yeah, I want the colors to be not exactly right for the face. One thing he keeps doing when people ask him about Tulip is saying she died in a canoe accident. She flipped her like kayak or canoe and died. Which is incredibly fucked up, which really annoys people when he said it, and I don't know, I think it shouldn't be funny, but I think it is. I think I'm mostly done with the pictures. I'm going to add some green and some blue to the walls. I'm not going to do it with this little brush, but a slightly larger one, do it faster. When I first started to watch this series with my friends from the film club, another guy on another Discord, when I mentioned I was watching this with friends, was like, "Oh, I know who your favorite character is going to be. They're in series 2. And I was like, okay. Apparently he was talking about Lake. And that would have made perfect sense, because one, I actually ended up really liking Lake after a rough start, also because I was having a bad day when we watched that second season, but like, and also because like you can, pretty sure you can hear how like feminine my voice is sounding, and if you didn't already know, I'm transmask. So yeah, that would have made total sense if Lake was my favorite character in the show. And it could have been the case, but that friend was horrified when the film club and I watched book 3, and it turned out my actual favorite character in the entire show was Simon. Which that friend did not expect, but which makes total sense for very, very specific and kind of personal reasons, including but not limited to the guy being like kind of on the spectrum in a bad way, like I am, like the least popular parts of it, like having to make plans for every single little thing in your life, and if it doesn't go the way you want it to go, you freak out. Having a what doctors call a strong sense of justice, but like it can be extremely misguided, as is evident with him. And yeah, gotta add some ink real quick. Other way more specific reasons why I was very quickly kind of obsessed with Simon. My mother, kind of neglectful, definitely a hoarder, not gonna go into details with that. And also that experience of like trying to make your neglectful parents understand what they put you through when you were way younger, specifically in their new house, specifically at night, specifically in that kind of setting with like this type of light, and with you completely freaking out and them just standing there and not replying much. An experience I had exactly way later than him, because I was already 30. But yeah, I was watching this episode and being like, oh my fucking god, the entire time it was happening. Also, this whole thing about like these idiots like hanging out at the mall. Same neglectful mother had like 2 locks on the apartment door and only ever gave me one of the 2 keys. So every single time she didn't want to see me, I was effectively locked outside of the apartment for a while. And it didn't happen terribly often, but often enough that I had to plan everything just in case I couldn't go back home. And a couple of times, not that often, but like a couple of times, I had to actually sleep outside. One of those times was on a bench at the mall, actually. And I was hanging out a lot at the library, in local parks, and yeah, at the fucking mall, because where else are you going to go? And so yeah, that was when I was between 18 and 21, basically. I made a nice little mix of cobalt blue and china blue here, and I'm going to like add it over the entire thing. But yeah, the last thing that made me relate to that bastard way more than I initially expected to is so weird, because in my head it was a very positive memory, one of the only positive memories I had from high school. I had a friend during the last year of high school, which is called Terminal here. I was 16, and it was already pretty bad at home, okay? And I wasn't in a really good place mentally at the time, even if it was a bit better than the previous years, which is also why it's viewed in like a positive way in my head. I had a best friend who was this really cool girl. I at least I thought she was the coolest person. We would argue sometimes, but mostly we were like 2 peas in a pod at all times. The thing was, I had to watch book 3 of Infinity Train to notice our dynamic might have been weird. When we were like hanging out together, all the decision making was hers. I would mostly tag along and kind of follow her everywhere. Mostly it was for very nice things like, hey, let's go to the park, let's read that book together. But like a couple of times it was, hey, can you please watch out for me while I kick this guy's ass? And by that I mean that literally running down the corridor, and she went to give one random guy who looked at her funny and ass kicking, literally. And every time I was like, yeah, sure. And it only registered to me as something that might have been a problem in retrospect while watching book 3. Because I was watching this guy having sort of the same behavior around his best friend. At first I was like, and I even said it in chat to my friends from Film Club, if I'm not mistaken, something along the lines of, oh, that takes me back. I needed a couple of episodes to realize that wasn't at all healthy, and I hadn't really thought about it in all these years in retrospect, and it was kind of like very delayed wake-up call. This is what good fiction does, right? It makes you think about real life. Yeah, all these things combined make me not normal about Simon as a character, but also Grace. I love both of their characters. I think Grace is genuinely was one of the best written characters in fiction, period, not just animated series. Next step is going to be to add yellow ink and also yellow watercolor for the center part, because I don't want it to be too yellow. I just want it to glow but not be like overwhelmingly yellow. Going back to the Amelia discourse after my way too personal Simon related ramblings, every time that Owen Dennis mentions in a Q&A that last book was planned to feature, among presumably other things, someone quite old on the train with memory issues and unable to like retain the lessons gained on the train. Every single time this is mentioned, my mind immediately gravitates towards Amelia and picturing her in that situation. And I don't know if she was supposed to be the one in this situation, even if I assume she would have been like a recurring character up till the very end, since she kind of started this whole mess to begin with. Yeah, and it's kind of horrifying, but it would be a very powerful way to like bookend the series with her, even if it would be a presumably tragic one. I'm very curious about the other books that are not like book 5, for which we have quite a lot of information actually. Book 6 and 7. Book 6 we only have one picture for, and it's not even who was supposed to be like the main character or anything. It was just like kind of a tone picture, as they described it, to give a vague idea of the direction they were aiming for, but I don't think that character would have been the actual main character. One of the things I really love about this fandom and all the deep dives I did on it, this character has his own little tiny fandom inside the fandom. I've seen more than a couple of people doing a lot of fan art of that character and the companion in the picture. There's a really beautiful fan art of them in the jellyfish car that Lake was exploring at the very beginning of book 2. We have next to nothing, no information for book 7 though. We do have words attached to them, like themes. 5 was grief, because Amelia obviously. 6 was guilt, which is intriguing. And 7 was revenge. The only thing that was said about it was very vague, and it was supposed to be about someone we don't already know, presumably an adult if I understand it correctly, who went on the train, left the train, came back to reality, to their entire life destroyed by this experience, basically, and them ending back on the train because of the new problem that creates. And that would have been so interesting in my humble opinion. I'm really disappointed we will probably never get that one. Maybe someday it will come back. I still have hope. It's time to add some details. I'm going to start with the easy part, which is making little white Posca dots on all the orbs. Something that kind of surprises me about this fandom. Maybe it's because everyone is still hoping we are going to get book 5, but I've seen little to no one trying to make their own version of it. I've seen plenty of fan art of it, but yeah, it's something that people just don't do. One trend that I really like is the one where people were making versions of themselves as passengers with Dennis and companion. And my first contact I had with this fandom was actually years ago through a friend, through an artist who I used to talk to quite often back in the day on DeviantArt, when it was still my main social platform around 2009 or 10 or so. And I was still following that guy years later. And at some point he made an Infinity Train OC as well. And it looked so good. And like I faved it and reblogged it, even if I knew nothing about the show. And it looked very intriguing and interesting. So yeah, my first contact with that fandom was actually through an OC. I've seen a few people trying to write a fan-made book for the show, which is really cool. I'd like to see more of that. I've been trying to read some of them. Some of them were really good, actually. Not as good as the show, very obviously, but like better than I expected for fanfiction. There's a huge difference between a full team of people working on a TV series and one person trying to write the entire thing themselves. There's been a couple of them that I really didn't like. Mostly, I'm not going to name names because it would be really mean, and I don't think it's a good thing to do inside of a fandom. Because my general rule of thumb is like, if you don't like the fan-made thing that someone has poured their energy and heart into, don't say anything, because what's the point? It's just someone's passion and they made that for free on their free time. If you don't like it, just close the thing and move on. Or maybe try to think of something nice to say, then maybe mention a couple of things that could be made better. I don't know, like, yeah, it's very different from like disliking an actual series where you can like criticize it all the ways you want to, because fan-made things are at a completely different level. And yeah, my main issue with the ones I didn't like was that their authors were always trying to over-explain things. The show is very short. Each book is very short. A lot of things are said in very few words in it. There is a way to like make something kind of short even in fanfiction. The thing is, it doesn't feel like it belongs in the same universe when people over-explain things, whereas the show doesn't. And because it's one of the aspects of the show I really like, if fanfiction over-explains things, by definition I'm not going to like it very much, or like I'm just going to close it and move on. And yeah, that's a problem of some of these fan-made books. There's one I really disliked, and I'm not even going to mention it because it's apparently very well known. I'm sure it was well intentioned, but like it was so heavy-handed, I couldn't. I'm trying to think of fan-made books I liked. I still have a lot of them to read. I think I'm going to try to read most of them actually, just out of curiosity mostly. One of my fave ones isn't entirely a new book because most of the characters aren't new. It's I'll Get It Right Sometime by Trojan Teapot. And it's like one of the many chapters of an AU they made. And it doesn't really make sense unless you like read it in the context of that AU, because a lot of things won't make sense out of the specific context of the rest of the story. But also it's one of the very rare fics that tries to write more material for Hazel, which I really appreciate because she kind of deserves the world. And I thought the way she was written there was very interesting and made complete sense, and also built very nicely on some of the themes explored in book 3, which, as you might recall, is my favorite one. One of the themes which isn't talked about enough, I think, in book 3 is the cycle of abuse and neglect, and how people repeat behaviors that caused their own problems in the first place. Grace had already problems because of her parents neglecting her. Also, another role model she had on the way was Amelia. The few seconds she saw of Amelia, anyway. That's like imposing silhouette in a mech, taking everything from one train car without asking questions and moving on, ignoring everyone else. And that's kind of the one of the role models she chose, so she does exactly the same thing when she's raiding cars with the Apex. I've made an entire post about like how she sort of does the same stuff that her parents do in her tape to people around her, the Apex kids and Simon. She like asks them to kneel when she's there, and her mother kind of towers over her in her tape in the same way with the same angles. She judges people based on their clothes and what they give to her. She decides what's cool and what isn't cool. Obviously, she lies to obtain whatever she wants, like her dad in her tape. I don't think she's even aware she's doing it, but yeah. And Simon, in the same way, is recreating behaviors from the cat. He abandons Hazel at the first occasion he gets, even though he keeps saying the cat abandoned him, and he doesn't even stop for 2 seconds to realize what he just did. Partly because at this point he doesn't consider Hazel as a person anymore, but he doesn't even stop to think for 1 second about the irony of what he's doing. He collects stuff and makes kids collect stuff for him. He has this attitude where he's like always talking as if he's above others, but like the second he gets any pushback on that, he switches to victim mode basically, and like the cat does that also. All of this to say, going back to I'll Get It Right Sometime, the fanfic I was talking about initially. What's very interesting, I think, in the way the author writes Hazel in that fic, is that she kinda gets the worst of both Grace and Simon, even though she's trying not to be like them. Just like Grace does with like her parents, who she really doesn't want to be like, and Simon does with the cat, who he clearly doesn't want to be like. What happens with Hazel in that fic is very clearly she needs constant attention to like feel good about herself, basically like Grace. And also she's terrified of being abandoned, which is exactly like Simon. And the combination of the two is kind of kind of hard to deal with for the passenger who is her friend in that fic, because obviously his number is starting to go down, and Hazel kind of panics, and she's like, no, it shouldn't do that, because if you do that, you are going to leave the train and you are going to abandon me. And oof. That's a dynamic we sort of saw in book 4 with Morgan, but like, since it's with a character we already know, it's even more powerful than that. The other fic, which is like an original fan-made book for the series that I really liked, I should say I really like so far, because I haven't finished reading it, is The Weakling's Masks by Bokunda Choa, or I don't know how to pronounce that, I'm sorry. And there's like only original characters in there, which is very refreshing. It's a character the author describes as a perpetual sad sack, and a little boy who pretends to be a superhero, and they are both on the train and meet at different points in their adventure. And there's also a denizen who looks like a tiny pink mouse called Princess. And yeah, I really like how the characters evolve so far. I hope it sticks the landing, but so far it has been really good for something fan-made. I really recommend it. There's some recurring ideas through the fandom as well, in fanfics, which happens in every fandom. It's funny because for some some things I'm really passionate about, I don't read any fanfic. And other things, I only read the ones my friends are going to write. It was the case with the Myst fandom and the Silent Hill fandom. In some rare cases, I'm very, very intrigued by the fandom itself and how people respond to some kind of media that I like more interested in that than to actually read extra material made by fans on something. That was the case for Death Stranding, because the game is so weird that I was like, okay, I need to know what people are writing about this. That's basically where I was at also for Infinity Train. I wanted to know what people were writing about this universe and the mechanics of this universe. And also the various reactions of the fandom to the various books, because they are very different from each other. Perhaps not surprisingly, book one doesn't seem to inspire a lot of fan works. I think it's because a Tulip story is very, very well self-contained. There isn't a lot of creative stuff out there. There's good stuff out there, not just not insanely creative stuff people are doing with it. I can remember two that I really like off the top of my head. One is written from the perspective of the train itself. That was very interesting. How alien it is and how it sees all the passengers as like math, like lines of codes and numbers, and that's it. And it was very interesting. I wish I could remember what it was called. The other one was extremely short. It was not really horror, but like kind of sent a chill down my spine, to be honest. And it was so short. It was like 200 words max. One paragraph of fanfic, basically. It was Tulip exploring her school at night with her friend Michaela after she came back, and she gets a jump scare. She thinks she saw somebody, and Michaela goes to check, and no, it's okay, Tulip, it's just your reflection in a mirror. And it just ends there, and you're just sitting there kind of contemplating all the possibilities. Was it really her reflection? Did they replace her reflection by some other poor reflection who is going to be as depressed as MT was? And if it's not her reflection, what was it? Because I don't know, it's just the implications are kind of... I thought it was very clever. Book 2 seems to elicit one response only, and it's basically what happens once Lake is on Earth. How do you live as a mirror person on Earth? And most of the things people write about this are very wholesome and very cute, and I really like that. It's like people took one look at book 2 and were like, okay, MT's been through enough, I want them to be happy. And I think that's really funny. Some of the things people do with like the fact she has a metal body are very, very funny too. There's several where she adds magnets, or Jessie adds magnets on her skin as temporary tattoos. I drew a little drawing about that based on one of those fics because I thought it was so cute. People wondering if she needs to cut her hair, if it grows back. People wondering if she's going to grow up. People wondering if she's going to figure out things about her identity, their identity, and maybe try to transition. And if so, how do you transition when you're made of metal? And there's a lot of very funny things about that. A lot of things about angst, recurring nightmares of being chased, of being back on the train. And yeah. Book 3 elicits a lot of different reactions. Obviously, a lot of people are trying to do fix-it-fix, and most of them don't really work because they are trying to fix it. The ones that are actually working look like fix-it-fix and break things in a completely different way. And I kind of love those. It's such a perfectly written tragedy. It's like a disaster in slow motion you can like only watch in despair. It's very hard to change something in that disaster and still having it make sense. and turning it to something that doesn't end as a disaster. Some people make Simon do like a face heel turn at the very last moment, which doesn't feel natural most of the time. One or two actually work. The saga I mentioned, the series of fic made by Trojan Teapot, is one instance of I think it works. There's one which is very old where someone makes him have his breakdown before he tries to kill Grace a third time. And it kind of works, even if obviously I prefer the way the show did it, but that was a rare instance where I could sort of buy it. But yeah, I really like the fics that are like, okay, that guy doesn't die at the end, and then things go wrong in a completely different way. That I think that's very funny. There's an unfinished series of fic that their author tried to bury, so I'm not going to like mention the title, but they are going to be fairly easy to find. Where like he doesn't die, he ends up on Earth. He has no family and no support on Earth, and he's still not in a very good place mentally, and yeah, things also get pretty bad on Earth. There's one fic which has a very funny concept, but it's not really funny when you read it. It's kind of horrifying, actually. I think it's called Second, Third, Fourth Chances or something like that. And it's one notices a passenger died for some reason and noticed the number was way higher than most passengers. And he thinks it's a glitch. And he sends the guy back in his own timeline to like try to fix the glitch. Basically, he has another chance to get things right and fails. And and it keeps happening because the quote-unquote glitch is still there, because the guy is still a fucking piece of shit. So, and the thing is, he remembers every loop of that cycle. It's kind of Groundhog Day, but horrifying in every single way possible. Sometimes he makes the same mistake. Sometimes he makes that mistake earlier or later. Sometimes he makes a different mistake, and it's also horrifying. Sometimes he tries to get things right, and he also dies in a really stupid way, and it's it's unfinished. I think it's going to be unfinished forever, sadly, because the author hasn't updated in a while. But it still ends in a somewhat satisfactory manner, because there's some hope he's going to understand what went wrong eventually in the last chapter the person wrote. And book 4 mostly elicit a lot of shipping, which is understandable. We love Ryan and Min. There's also quite a lot of fics about homophobia in the 80s, which I think is interesting when it's done well, and it's more often than not done well, so pretty nice. And sometimes it elicits the opposite reaction of book 3, where people want to do fix-it fix. Some people want to transform the fourth one into a tragedy, and most of them do so by turning Min into a pseudo-Amelia figure, by killing Ryan and having Min trying to bring him back. One of the most like brutal ones has been deleted, and I'm kind of sad it happened, because I thought it was very interesting, even if it was unfinished and very angsty and very over the top, but not in a bad way. Yeah, there's more than a couple of those, and I think it's very interesting considering book 4 was supposed to be parallel to book 5, where with Amelia, and I don't know if people do that on purpose or if it's an instinct to notice the similarities between the two characters. They both have a childhood friend who's very important in their life. Stuff related to music, also refusal to like move on. Min's problem is very much related to like staying in one place and not deciding anything. And Emilia is sort of in the same kind of position. Yeah, so I don't know if people consciously notice this and write stuff like that because of this, or if it's just based on vibes, but very interesting nonetheless. I'm really glad people are exploring the show in this type of way. Okay, I think I'm done there. I'm going to redo the line art one last time, which is fairly boring to see, so I'm not going to film it. And yeah, I think we are done. I see you later.